haven't done a film review for this channel before, let's start that. We're going to start looking at AM1200 as a 2008 film made by David Pryor and starring Eric Lange. Neither of these are names that I know. I've never actually heard of this film before. I actually just discovered it through the Lovecraft e-zine, and then also it was featured in the Lovecraft Film Festival. I think it won some awards for that, which is just because it really did deserve them. This is a good film. Let's take a look.
The movie is about this guy played by Eric Lange who's on the run from the police for ripping off the company he works for. He isn't necessarily a bad guy, but rather, it's like in that film Office Space. Imagine working a shitty corporate job and then you find a way to rip off the company and get away with it. It's like that.
Yeah, I mean, you get a couple of off-sheet purchase requests, a well-timed buy recommendation, and hello, Bermuda. And fuck you, Molech Milcom.
So our protagonist, he does the theft, and his friend who actually put him up to the idea of it commits suicide, and he freaks out, and then he drives off to one of these middle of the nowhere type places that you see in quite a few horror films, like in The Hills Have Eyes, something like that. While he's driving around out there at night, he picks up on this weird transmission from AM1200 that requests urgent help.
You can hear my voice. Come to radio station KBAL, AM1200. We have a medical emergency.
Being curious, I guess, he finds the station, drives up, looks around, and his decision is...
No fucking way.
But of course, horror movie cliche strikes, and his car dies, and he's stuck there.
Without spoiling anything, I can divulge this film really tackles Lovecraftian themes extremely well, namely the insignificance of man, which is always a big one with Lovecraft. I don't think it's really appealing for regular horror fans. It's more of a thinking man's sort of thing. Not that saying that if you appreciate other horror, you're not a thinking man, but you know what I mean. But I think if you're Lovecraftian, you'll get a lot more out of it than if you are a fan of stuff like Sinister or Conjuring or one of these mainstream horror films. In general, the film is pretty well made, even though this is an indie production and it's only 40 minutes long, and it's as actors which have worked in Hollywood, but they're nowhere near even D-list stars, I'd say. At no point do you feel like this is a low-budget thing. As a lot of time and effort has gone into this, clearly, and the fact that it's 40 minutes, not a full-length film, is actually perfect if you think about it, because Lovecraft, he wrote short stories, right? So why not make a short film? Some of the other Lovecraftian films I've watched, which are direct adaptations of his stuff, some, for example, maybe The Dunwich Horror or something, sometimes really does feel like dragged on, and you could get to the point a lot quicker. And this film is very good at getting to the point about what it is. It's no excess scenes that are unnecessarily tacked on for the sake of whatever reason. The station is not completely abandoned. The guy who made the transmission is still in there, and he's not exactly stable. It would be expected in a Lovecraft story, right?
Anyway, he has chained himself to the railing, and he has gone beyond the point of breaking. He seems like many Lovecraftian characters to have been driven to the point of madness and raving after having confronted some hideous realization or horror.
You're still sane enough to add vital information to the story, which is basically the big reveal.
What's going on?
Transmissions. We summoned it. Our God had summoned us. Don't know. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't choose. We transmit, it receives. It transmits, we receive.
The DJ is clearly driven to the point of going mad and is in a state of utter desperation. And he sees no escape from this unknown fate, and he realizes just how screwed he is, and it just overwhelms the mind, I suppose. Not even just from a human perspective, in that maybe if you are, loaded with debt and something like that, and then suddenly you freak out, oh my god, this is like supernatural shit. So it's really getting to him, and it's something that is totally incompatible with human understanding of the world. It kind of makes me think of the narrator from Dagon, who in that story, it is implied that actually he loses his mind and he feels so persecuted by this Dagon entity that he ends up throwing himself out the window, killing himself. What I like about this point in the film is that you still have no real idea what the hell is going on. I've noticed that a lot reading Lovecraft. You read a few pages and you suddenly like, what is this, what? And it kind of has that influence in this film as well. And of course, a Lovecraft story is not complete without some sort of messed up monster, right? This film has one too, and it is quite a reveal. I was quite shocked when I actually saw it at first. You know, you expect like some tentacled monstrosity, which is understandable, you know, Lovecraft and his fetish for tentacles, but this one was kind of unique, and like, when I watched it, I was like, wow, okay, well, that's the thing. Okay, here's the reveal. This is the monster. The monster really struck me as really well made. The build up to it is like I said before with the music, it's really built up well, and it just sort of like, you know, tries to prepare you for what is to come, and then you see it and then it's like, wow, and then you start actually thinking about it, you know. It's hidden down in this basement of this radio station in the middle of nowhere, and it appears to be like a giant humanoid thing. So it brings to mind two Lovecraftian stories in which a hideous thing is found hidden somewhere. Pickman's Model being the first one, and the second one being the Shunned House.
We never really see it, we only see parts of it. It leaves so much up to us to just imagine what the hell this thing is. It's obviously massive in size, probably humanoid, and somewhat intelligent.
What is it? How can it live underground like that? How many exist? Is this the only one, or are there more? A monster that size obviously needs a lot of space to live. So does that mean that there are underground caverns, or there labyrinths running across this area of the world, or all over the world? It kind of makes you wonder. It's kind of like in The Descendant, or in the Statement of Randolph Carter. In both those films, humans go and discover these massive spaces underground, and obviously down there are things that we should not be messing with.
The monster is clearly just using humans to fulfill its own needs, that being food. It takes over the human's mind via some psychic signal and uses the controlled human to get others to come to it, using the radio station, and thus provide food. It reminds me of that fungus that infects ants and alters their behavior in order to spread the fungus, and thus the fungus can propagate itself. The fungus is also passed on from one ant to the other, kind of like how the transmission here is passed on from one human to the other.
The monster seems to do this possession thing via an audio frequency of something. Early in the film, when he first picks up this transmission, we hear this.
Medical emergency. I repeat, if you're in the Mount Zapad area, please come to radio station KBAL.
We also hear this part when he is made to feed the monster. That high-pitched squealing seems to be the point where it is implied that the monster can influence people enough to draw them and control them to the station where it lives. If you think about it, if a possessed human was just sending out a distress call via normal means through the radio, the logical thing would be to, well, if you're driving and you hear this distress call, maybe you think, hell, yeah, let's call the police, get the police coming. But if you get masses of cops and everyone showing up at the station, suddenly this monster is going to be found out. So it has to be kind of selective. So it seems logical that it uses a signal to influence how people will react once they hear this distress call from the radio, which is sent out by the possessed human. I narrate a Lovecraftian story and decide how good it is, for my own personal subjective view of course, I like to think about how would Lovecraft actually see it if he sat down and watched it. If this film was written down in Lovecraft's prose, would I pick up that this isn't actually a Lovecraft story? And in this case, in this film, I think it meets those standards. I think he would approve of this film. I think it's definitely up there and on par with perhaps some of his earlier fiction, such as The Temple or The Statement of Randolph Carter. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I take off 1 point because there's one unclear point for me. It's when the guy, the protagonist, is possessed and he goes out to the front of the radio station and he starts flashing with a flashlight at someone, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm stupid, but I can't figure out what that is about. I know it's not the fucking monster hiding in the forest with a flashlight. If you have watched this film and you know what the cause between this flashing of the lights in the forest is about, please tell me. It's really bugging me. Anyway, thanks for watching this review. I look forward to doing a lot more film reviews in the future.